Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Emma Mukhtar, and this is a new edition of our program, Newsroom Live. Today's edition will tackle a variety of local, regional, and international news. A short break, and I'm going to be back with you. Welcome back. We start our episode with the news from Egypt, as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and visiting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken probed in Cairo on Tuesday intensified efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza, secure an exchange of hostages and allowing the international aid into the besieged enclave. We have more in the following report.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his accompanying delegation in Cairo on Tuesday. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said the meeting focused on ongoing intensified efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza and secure an exchange of hostages, as well as allowing international aid into the besieged enclave to end the Palestinians' humanitarian suffering. During the meeting, President Sisi stressed that Cairo was exerting tremendous efforts to allow humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip in coordination with UN and aid agencies amid difficult field circumstances. The head of state hailed the vital role played by the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, on this track. The President stressed that the international and UN resolutions over the crisis must be implemented and serious steps to settle the crisis should be taken in order to guarantee a lasting peace in the Middle East. For his part, Blinken conveyed greetings of U.S. President Joe Biden to President Sisi, stressing his keenness to enhance this strategic partnership with Egypt with the aim of maintaining stability, calming the situation, and protecting the region from expanding the conflict. The U.S. top diplomat praised Egypt's role in consolidating security and stability in the Middle East region. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry and Intelligence Chief Abbas Kamel attended the meeting. The U.S. Secretary of State met President Sisi as part of a 48-hour four-nation flurry of shuttle diplomacy in a search of a ceasefire in Gaza's war, while Israel pressed in its onslaught in the south of the enclave. Blinken arrived in Cairo from Riyadh before swiftly departing for a flight to Qatar. He is due in Israel overnight for consultations on Wednesday morning.
Well, to shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have this phone with our dear guest, His Excellency Ambassador Midhat El-Meligi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening to you.
Well, Your Excellency, how do you see or follow the meeting between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken?
Well, there are several aspects of this visit. First of all, it comes in within a tour of the American State Department. The most important thing that I believe is that the United States understands the crucial role that Egypt is playing into trying to reach a ceasefire in Gaza Strip and calming the situation and implementing the necessary relief aid to end the human suffering in the Strip. I think this was the most important thing that the United States realized so far. The second thing, which I think is quite important as well, is what His Excellency, the President of the Republic, mentioned about the important role of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, known as UNRWA, and how this crucial role played by this United Nations organization is very important. Of course, this comes to answer to the suspension of the cooperation between the organization and the United States with several other countries in the Western Hemisphere, if you can say so, due to some Israeli allegation that although 10 days have passed so far, or even 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, and no proof was presented from Israel to consolidate their accusations. However, the United States and Canada and Japan and several other countries have suspended
Yes.
their cooperation with UNRWA pending the investigation that didn't come so far and doesn't seem that it's coming anytime soon, which
Yes.
proves once again the unconditional support for any Israeli point of view of this conflict.
Yes.
However, I think that what President Sisi has explained today about the tremendous effort that Egypt is making in extremely difficult field conditions to provide the Palestinians with the humanitarian aid and enabling it to enter Gaza. And of course, the necessary organization that would coordinate this with us. I think it was very important for the Americans to hear our point of view about how difficult it is to implement the humanitarian aid and the medical aid that the Palestinians are in dire need for. I think these are the most important things that the State Department Minister heard from President Sisi today. It was very important, and we hope that besides that, of course, the peace initiative that we have launched about the Gaza Strip will have some ears from the American administration to implement it.
Yes. So, Your Excellency, Ambassador Miligi, during the meeting between the President Sisi and also Antony Blinken, they both spoke also of course, the humanitarian aid, the importance of this, and also they stressed on the importance of the exchange of hostages between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So, do we expect after this meeting a kind of any solution for the exchange of hostages or a kind of ceasefire?
Well, we sure hope so. Unfortunately, the answer is in the hands of the Israelis, that so far they did not ease their military campaign, and the genocide has been committed over the Palestinian people in Gaza. And accordingly, since we haven't seen any positive signs from the Israeli side, one cannot really say if there could be this swap, although the Israeli government needs it as much as the Palestinian people need it. And at the same time, we hope that during these negotiations we explain thoroughly the importance of real American pressure on the Israelis in this point. I have to mention here that there were quite substantial reports about the readiness of the United States to recognize the state of Palestine as a demilitarized state. And in order to do so, we have to calm the situation. These reports have been published a little bit in a shy way, but actually they prove. And we heard some equivalence from President Biden before that there is a certain readiness to accept a Palestinian demilitarized state to be viable next to an Israeli state. All these are very hopeful initiatives, but we first need to set the place for it by activating a serious ceasefire. The truth that Egypt has proposed consists of 45 days of truce that might lead to a long-term ceasefire between both parties, enabling all the peace-loving forces in the region and outside of it to start working on a peace negotiations that would lead to the establishment of a Palestinian state. We hope that the Americans can convince their partners, I mean the Israelis, with the importance of listening to such a plan for the sake of the Israeli people before anyone else.
Yes. So, Your Excellency Ambassador Miligi, how do you evaluate Egypt's role since the start of the crisis or the war since the 7th of October?
Well, actually, we have several axes if we want to talk about the role. First of all, there was a very important internal role here in Egypt, which is about the safety of our borders, especially that there were a lot of provocation from the Israeli side towards our border and still going on until this minute. I mean, the Palestinians who have been pushed, 1.7 Palestinians who have been pushed from their homes towards the Egyptian border due to the genocide that is taking place and the Israeli carpet bombing that is taking place in all the Gaza Strip. And this was maybe the most important thing. The second is the insistence of Egypt on not accepting this forced displacement, because this would simply mean that there will be a liquidation of the Palestinian cause.
Yes.
President Sisi was very clear when he explained that he will not accept the Palestinian who will enter here, because he simply knows that whoever will leave the Gaza Strip will never come back. And that's why he insists that they should stay on their land, and he didn't even accept an internal displacement from north of Gaza to the south of Gaza and vice versa, because this would also mean the same unaccepted violation of the international law by a forced displacement of the occupied Palestinian people.
Yes.
This is the first thing. Of course, we have to mention the humanitarian aid and the receiving of the wounded who have been treated in Egyptian hospitals, not just in the Sinai area, but even in Egypt, all of Egypt itself. And of course, the humanitarian aid, that 80% of it from the whole world, 80% of it was provided by Egypt. So I think that the Egyptian effort that is ending right now with a large-scale peace initiative, all this shows to which degree Egypt is committed to the Palestinian cause and doing its utmost to help the Palestinians in their struggle and in their resistance to get finally and receive their independence and their liberation from the colonial forces, which is Israel.
Yes. Also, today, the armed forces here in Egypt. Okay, it seems we have lost the line. We thank very much His Excellency Ambassador Medhat El-Miligi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, a short break and I'm going to be back with you. Welcome back. Well, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received the French Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, Stéphane Séjourné, in the attendance of Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry. The French Minister conveyed the greetings of the French President Emmanuel Macron to President el-Sisi. Presidential spokesman Ahmed Fahmy said that the meeting tackled means of promoting bilateral relations. The meeting also reviewed the latest developments in the Gaza Strip and the Egyptian intensified efforts with various partners to implement a ceasefire and ensure the entry of the humanitarian aid to the Strip. For his part, the French minister asserted his country's keenness to coordinate with Egypt to carry out a ceasefire in the Palestinian territories and exchange hostages. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi received Eric Trappier, head of the French company Dassault, and his accompanying delegation on Tuesday. The meeting focused on cooperation frameworks between the two sides in the field of military industrialization, technical support, and capacity building. President el-Sisi reiterated Egypt's continuing of cooperation with the French company in light of its long-standing experience experience in the field of military industries with the advanced technological systems. The meeting was attended by Lieutenant General Ahmed Khaled, commander of the Strategic Command and supervisor of military industrialization. French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné said on Monday that Israeli settler violence must stop against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank following a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The French minister denounced anti-Palestinian rhetoric and even calls to commit war crimes by Israeli officials after some Netanyahu allies have appeared to endorse Jewish resettlement of the Gaza Strip after the war. Séjourné called for supporting the West Bank-based Palestinian Authority of President Mahmoud Abbas. Séjourné called for a comprehensive political solution with two states living in peace side by side, urging the resumption of the peace process without delay. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas stressed the significance of speeding up the flow of humanitarian and medical aid into the Gaza Strip. During his meeting with visiting French Foreign Minister Stéphane Séjourné, the Palestinian president renewed his full refusal of forced displacement of Palestinians either in Gaza Strip, the West Bank or East Jerusalem, stressing that the Strip is a part of the Palestinian state. He also called for the necessity of stopping Israeli occupation and its continuous actions against the Palestinian people in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and the crimes of the Israeli settlers. The United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, said on Tuesday it expects donors to review their suspensions of funding following the publication of a preliminary report into Israeli claims that a dozen of its employees took part in the October 7th Hamas operation in Israel. UNRWA's representative in Lebanon, Dorothee Klaus, first said in Beirut that the preliminary investigation report would be ready by early March, but her office later revised the timeline to say the report would be ready in several weeks. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department deputy spokesperson said that Biden administration would redirect any funds for UNRWA to other aid agencies working in Gaza if Congress passes legislation that would bar funding of the main UN agency for Palestinians. The White House said on Monday that Biden administration strongly opposes a plan by U.S. House Republicans for the standalone bill to provide aid to Israel, and President Joe Biden would veto it if it reached his desk. Details in the following report.
U.S. President Joe Biden's administration said on Monday he would veto a standalone bill backed by House of Representatives Republicans that will provide aid to Israel as the White House pushes for a broader measure providing assistance to Ukraine and Israel and providing new funds for border security. Officials from the Democratic president's administration have been working for months with Senate Democrats and Republicans on legislation unveiled on Sunday, combining an overhaul of U.S. immigration policy and new funding for border security with billions of dollars in emergency aid for Ukraine, Israel, and partners in the Indo-Pacific region. The $118 billion spending measure also would provide humanitarian assistance to civilians affected by global conflicts. Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson announced the House would reject the bipartisan Senate bill and instead vote this week on a measure providing aid only to Israel. In a statement in the evening that the president's veto threat was an act of betrayal. Republicans are bitterly divided over the legislation with Donald Trump the frontrunner for the party's presidential nomination and its closest allies loudly voicing opposition, calling the Senate plan insufficiently tough. Trump has made security at the border with Mexico a major talking point in his campaign against Biden ahead of the November election. Republican majority House passed an Israel-only bill in November, but it was never taken up in the Democratic-led Senate as negotiators worked on Biden's request for Congress to approve a broader emergency security package.
Well, the armed forces have organized a visit for North Sinai for members of the Arab and the foreign military representation delegation. The delegation have arrived in North Sinai Governorate to inspect the efforts exerted by Egypt to supply humanitarian and the medical aid for the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Here's the full report.
Within the framework of the armed forces' keenness on unifying efforts by brother and friendly countries to overcome the current humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the military attaches agency organized a visit for members of the Arab and foreign military representation delegation to North Sinai Governorate. The delegation has arrived in Rafah border crossing to inspect the effects exerted by Egypt to supply humanitarian and medical aid for the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. The delegation was received by Governor of North Sinai, General Muhammad Abdel Fadil. The delegation was briefed by Commander of the 2nd Field Army, General Muhammad Rabia, on the efforts exerted by the armed forces in cooperation with the state's authorities to ensure the flow of humanitarian aid to Gaza Strip. The representative of the Health Ministry and Egyptian Red Crescent reviewed before the delegation efforts exerted by civil society organizations to supply medical aid to the Palestinian people. The visit also included an inspection to Rafah border crossing to follow up on the flow of aids through the crossing and the Egyptian efforts in evacuating the injured to receive medical treatment inside Egypt. This was followed by the delegation's inspection for the logistics stores of the Egyptian Red Crescent, where work is being coordinated to submit the aids of various donors to the Palestinian Red Crescent in the Gaza Strip. The Arab and foreign military representation delegation wrapped up its visit by inspecting El Arish Public Hospital to get assured of the health case of the injured.
يعني استقبلونا وحضنونا وعالجونا ويعني واكلوا الاطفال 4 شهور انت عارف الحرب ما فيش إشي يعني في غزة صار.
They welcomed us, treated us and fed the children. As you know, the war has left nothing in Gaza. Up till now, they have kept supplying us with medical care and humanitarian aid. Thanks God, Egyptian people have exerted their utmost efforts and I thank them. We got a warm welcome. Egyptians are as good as Palestinians and they have supplied us with every aid.
الحمد لله رب العالمين. الأمانة الاستقبال فوق الوصف فوق يعني كتير أخوة بس يعرفوا إن إحنا فلسطينيين بدهم يشيلونا شيء.
We have gained a marvelous reception and treated us like brothers, and whenever they know we are Palestinians, they offer us everything. No other people help Palestinians as much as Egyptians do. For their part, the members of the delegation hailed the efforts exerted by Egypt in order to guarantee the continuous flow of humanitarian aid and ease the suffering of the Palestinian people.
Egyptian is doing extraordinary job since the war started, not only on the political in the summit that organized in the international arena in Cairo, but also in the helping suffering people, also to expatriate people for different countries. I heard more than 30,000 people cross the border to go to their homelands, and also a lot of injuries in your hospitals, and effort is very big one and is much appreciated.
Well, to shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have this phone with Her Excellency Ambassador Suad Shalabi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good evening, Your Excellency.
Good evening.
Well, Your Excellency Ambassador Shalabi, the armed forces have organized a visit for North Sinai for the members of the Arab and the foreign military representation delegation. How did you follow this visit?
Well, I think this is the best way to show the whole world that the Rafah border has been open for humanitarian aid ever since the first day of the attack on Gaza.
Yes.
So it is Egypt's role, and it is, as you know, our brothers and sisters in Palestine. We are supporting them from day one, and we have opened the Rafah border to facilitate the humanitarian aid going in, even though it was blocked by the Israelis on the other side, and it was not able to reach the Palestinians wherever they are, especially on the northern Sinai. In the northern, Gaza, the Rafah border was open, and the facilitation of the blockade on Gaza made it very difficult, and it did not facilitate the humanitarian aid to pass through. And this is why we have asked the whole world to come and see for themselves. And this is a very good initiative from the Egyptian government in order to show the whole world that the Rafah border is open, and even while the fighting was continuing. The whole world is asking to stop the fighting so that the humanitarian aid could pass easily, and to allow the delivery of food, medical aid, fuel, and gas, cooking gas. All this is being blocked by the Israelis.
Yes, Your Excellency Ambassador Shalabi, after the inspection tour by the delegation in front of the Rafah crossing border, also they went and they visited the El Arish hospital, where some of the injured Palestinians were having taking very good care there. So give us an idea about this also.
Well, Egypt also have opened the hospitals in Rafah, in Sheikh Zayed, even in Egypt, in Cairo, and in different governorates, wherever there are ability in the hospitals, because of course there is the capacity for the hospitals to receive all those emergencies. That is why Egypt has supplied a lot of medical aid to Palestinians who need emergencies, especially those who have been injured, those who have been suffering from wounds and broken arms or legs. And so it was the borders in Rafah who have received and welcomed all these injured Palestinians, women and children, and of course men who have been wounded.
Yes.
And they have been treated in the Egyptian hospitals in Rafah and Sheikh Zayed, and also in Arish and hospitals. And that is why this initiative to visit the injured in the hospitals is very good, to show to the whole world that Egypt is also offering treatment for those who were injured and those who needed emergency treatment.
Yes. So, Your Excellency, Ambassador Shalabi, also after the inspection tour, the delegation have delivered statements to the media and said that they appreciated and thanked Egypt for the efforts that is exerted by the Egyptian side. Also, as we just saw in the report, that the Palestinians themselves who are staying beside their relatives who are injured in the hospitals, especially in the Al Arish hospital, they spoke to the media and thanked the Egyptians and said that they were very warmly welcomed by all the Egyptians, and that they feel that the Egyptians are their families. And so how do you see the reaction also from the people of Egypt themselves receiving their brothers from Palestine and visiting them, even they don't know them, they came and they visited them and they tried to supply them with food and medicine and wherever they can?
Well, the Egyptian support for the Palestinians is very clear. It's from day one, and of course, the relatives. This has been demonstrated by the relatives, the Palestinians who were able to speak to media. They have thanked the Egyptian government for its stand with all the Palestinians who pass the borders for medical assistance. And also, Egypt has been doing mediation, a lot of mediation with Israel, with Hamas, in order to stop the war and to stop the fighting, and of course to apply humanitarian law, and of course to ask the Hamas to release the hostages, and also ask Israelis to allow the delivery of food and allow the medical people to go to be able to go to help the Palestinians who need help.
Yes.
So we in Egypt are offering a lot of help to the Palestinians, whether they are in Gaza. We are sending medical aid, whether they are passing through the Rafah border to get medical assistance in Egyptian hospitals.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your valuable information. Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Suad Shalabi. Thank you very much for joining us over the phone. Yes, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a short break and I want to be back with you. Welcome back. Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri on Monday stressed the necessity of reaching a ceasefire in Gaza and assessing sustainable aid into the besieged strip to contain the explosive humanitarian conditions in the enclave. Shukri warned against the repercussions of an expansion of the regional conflict arising from the escalation in Gaza, pushing the entire region into instability. The minister made these remarks as he received a phone call from his Iraqi counterpart Fuad Hussein, reiterating Egypt's support for the Iraqi security and stability in light of the deeply rooted ties binding both nations. The two top diplomats discussed boosting bilateral cooperation as well as the military escalation recently witnessed in the Iraqi and Syrian arenas. The United Nations Security Council met on Monday to discuss U.S. air strikes on Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria in retaliation for a deadly drone attack on American soldiers. The details in the following report.
Russia and China accused the United States during a UN Security Council meeting of stoking already high tensions in the Middle East with its recent retaliatory strikes on Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria. U.S. military struck dozens of targets in Syria and Iraq overnight, retaliation for a January 28th drone attack on a base in Jordan that killed 3 U.S. soldiers. The strikes, which targeted elite Iranian units and pro-Iranian groups, have led to fears that the ongoing Israeli barbaric aggression in Gaza could spiral into a regional conflict. Russian ambassador, whose country called for the emergency meeting, said it's clear that American strikes were specifically, deliberately aimed to stoke the conflict. China's ambassador similarly claimed that the U.S. actions would certainly worsen the vicious cycle of tit-for-tat violence in the Middle East. Anger over Israel's acts of genocide in Gaza, which began after an unprecedented Hamas attack on October 7th, has grown across the Middle East, stoking violence involving Iran-backed groups in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria and Yemen. A UN official called for all parties to step back from the brink and consider the unbearable human and economic cost of a potential regional conflict. The American strikes have drawn criticism from the governments of Iraq and Syria and also from Iran, which denies any role in last month's drone attack. Iranian ambassador meanwhile pledged that if Iran faces any threat, attack or aggression affecting its security, it would not hesitate to exercise what he called its inherent rights to respond firmly.
Now, with the business news, as Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli stressed that the establishment of the free zones depends on specific criteria, namely attracting direct foreign investments and investing big, taking into account the localizing industry in a first state priority. The Prime Minister's remarks came at a meeting he chaired on establishing new free zones at the new cities. The meeting reviewed means to provide lands needed to build the free zones, which will attract industrial investments to boost the national industrial sector and increase exports. Egypt's stock market indices collectively declined at the close on Tuesday, being affected by huge selling operations by foreign and Arab corporations and investment funds and Arab investors, while local corporations and Egyptian investors went into purchasing operations. The benchmark EGX 30 index fell 1.43% to end the dealings at 27,270.93 points. The equal weighted index EGX 70 also declined by 0.93% to reach 6,759 points, while the more expanded EGX 100 index also edged lower by 1% to reach 9,486.28 points. Capital market for companies listed in the bourse lost about £1.945 billion. World share indexes rose on Tuesday, boosted by a sharp rise in Chinese stocks as Beijing ramped up efforts to put a floor under its slumping market, while government bond yields in Europe and the United States stabilized after 2 days of large increases. A slew of announcements from China's securities regulator, a reported upcoming meeting between President Xi Jinping and financial regulators highlighted the urgency with which Chinese authorities are trying to stem heavy losses in its stock market. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index rose 4%, its most in a day in 6 months. The Britain's FTSE 100 outperformed, rising 0.5%, boosted by 6% jump in oil major BP after it reported the fourth quarter profit of $3 billion. Now, with the sports news, Azeri Vitoria has been sacked as Egypt head coach after the African football giants' hopes of a record-extending 8th Africa Cup of Nations triumph were dashed last week. In a statement, the Egyptian Football Association announced that the board of directors thanked Portuguese manager Rui Vitoria and his staff, adding it was reviewing foreign coaches' resumes. In the interim, Hussam Hassan would take charge of the national side, who were knocked out of the competition last week in a dramatic penalty shootout against the Democratic Republic of Congo. The loss as the last 16 was a bitter pill for the Egyptians, who had gone to Ivory Coast hoping to win a first Cup of Nations since 2010, a year before talisman Mohamed Salah made his senior international debut. Well, with this we come to the end of our program. My name is Amal Mukhtar. Thank you for watching.